Come on, stay off X and touch grass. Don't overreact to that. I'm not. When I was watching the game, I was thinking about it too. I go, does Canales have a voice in this locker room? Worse for me, I ended up talking to a Bucs fan at length this weekend, and he was telling me how the concern with Canales is the leadership. We know he's a smart offensive mind, he's a motivational guy, but is he a coach or is he your drinking buddy? Does he tell you what you want to hear or what you need to hear? Who knows? I'll talk a little bit more about that, but I want to tell you what is really going on with the Carolina Panthers. And it's a mixed bag, which is terrible for me because I like hot takes. I like scorching hot takes. It's 80 degrees in this room because the takes are so hot. But really, I didn't have too many hot takeaways from that game. I think Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter are by and far better than anything the Panthers have. You're talking about this Panthers pass rush? No, you want to see real pass rushers? Look what Houston has. Will Anderson, he's moving so fast, he makes it look slow. He's like a good dancer. It is amazing how good they are. Hunter had Moten on his butt. Anderson teleported by Ekemekwana on that Bryce Young sack on the second drive. Dominant pass rushers. I think the Panthers looked, I won't use the word unprepared, but they look lethargic out there. Robert Hunt and Taylor Moten getting split by Danielle Hunter on that sack. They were better than that. They couldn't run the ball on those first two drives. Chuba had like a couple 2-yard runs. They could not move the ball. They got dominated up front. Even Bryce Young, he had a bad throw to T-Mac. I think on that throw to T-Mac on the second drive, a lot of people are saying maybe T-Mac could have outreached more. The ball was thrown high and away. I think Young should have thrown it and made T-Mac come back to the ball, maybe low and towards the ball, because he had a step. It wasn't Stingley. It was on number 25 on that Texans defense. And then Sanders gets one right to the hands and drops it. They weren't ready to go, and I will blame Canales somewhat for that, but then you listen to what he said after the game, and maybe the goal wasn't winning. Maybe the goal now for the Panthers is not winning in the preseason. And, you know, I say that laughingly, but honestly, this team did suffer something pretty traumatic. What happened to Nick Scorton? That was a physical injury, a collapsed lung in the joint practice in Houston. Scorton couldn't even go on the plane home. He had to be transported by car back to Charlotte, and he's back in Charlotte now. There's no timeline on his return at the moment, but that is something that could traumatize guys. You see that happening, and you go, this is just the preseason. This guy had a pretty scary injury where it was stated he couldn't breathe properly. That is why he was pulled aside originally. They thought something was wrong with him from overheating versus this being related to the collapsed lung. That is the case that the Panthers training staff did diagnose. But I want to go into this. How much can we blame Canales? And I will place the blame rightfully on Canales because I thought this entire preseason, when you've had the first teamers out there, so when you're putting out the product that everyone wants to see, everyone needs to see, the T-Mac, the Robert Hunt's been out there, the offensive line, aside from Damian Lewis, and of course, our charming prince, Bryce Young. So for those 4 drives, 2 in Cleveland against the backups, against guys that will not be starting on an NFL team, you go out on the first drive, Bryce Young throws a ball behind Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard drops it. You go 3 and out. The next drive, you get the touchdown and the nice ball down the sideline to T-Mac, and of course, the Jalen Coker touchdown. But you have your potential starting wide receiver throwing punches at the Browns safety. And that's not been the only potential disciplinary issue with this team. Lathan Ransom punting balls in practice. You have rookies who are celebrating. Even when Princely Umamuelen got drafted, it was like, I want to get a big contract, talking about how the Panthers are going to pay him someday because he's not paid enough now. This wouldn't happen on a Mike Tomlin team. This wouldn't happen on a Mike Vrabel team. This wouldn't happen on a Belichick team. And I think there is a question, longitudinal question, That's the word of the day. Longitudinal. I'm not saying Canales is the problem right now, but I will say that something to monitor is, does this guy have a prominent voice in that locker room? Do people respect him? Because if I'm Canales and I see how the Panthers offense looked, coming out slow, looking lethargic, I'm getting back to Charlotte and I'm having him run 100-yard sprints. We're not even going to wear pads. You're just running. It needs to be something like that. And Canales isn't Vrabel jumping into the pile, coming out with blood on his face like Rambo. That's not his style. He's schematic. He's an intellect. And I think there's something to be said about this team where they need someone, whether it's the quarterback or the coach or just a leading voice, because they don't have one right now. They don't have enough of that. Sure, you have Hunt. Sure, you have J.C. Horn. Sure, Derek Brown. But none of those guys are like Tom Brady going to Tampa. Florida was known for pornography and nothing else. And then Tom Brady goes to Tampa. And they have a Super Bowl. The economy's flourishing. Like everything is clean and it's amazing in Tampa with one season of Tom Brady. I'm not saying Young needs to be Tom Brady, but you need a voice like that. Someone who comes in and, you know, people are dinking around. They're taking a jock strap and like throwing it at people, messing around. And then you come in, the quarterback sits there and stands there and no one's messing around. No one's joking with each other. No one's doing any of that dumb, punting the ball in practice. No one's doing that because this guy's here. And if you do that, you're going to be on a train to West Virginia. You're going to be going to Canada to play in their league. That's what happens to people that mess around. And the Panthers do not have that type of voice. There might not be implications for guys just blatantly messing around on the practice field and during gameplay. Scott Fowler had to take. Dave Canales says starters won't play next week against Pittsburgh, which was his plan all along, sure. So Dave Canales has gone back and forth a million different times. His press conference after the game against Cleveland, Canales was saying, we're going to give the starters 3 drives. They only got 2 in Houston. And Scott Fowler goes on to say, but man, tough to roll into the regular season after these 2 shoddy performances. He's right. He's right. I don't think Canales cares much about the preseason. In fact, here's the clip. Here's Canales saying it himself. Canales talking after the game in Houston. Here it is.
You know, I just wanted them to go out and earn another series, and I just really felt like, with giving them 2 shots to do it and it not coming up, I wasn't going to just put them back out there to kind of say, hey, let's just play some more football. That kind of paired with we got great work 2 days ago. And, I just kind of looked at it that way. I felt like, the work we got against the Texans in the practice was good enough for me to kind of look at that and wanted them to get the prep and get ready for the game, get out there and get a couple of series. But that's kind of what was behind it.
So there's the clip. Canales says they don't deserve to be out there. Like, really? That wasn't a team that looked like they wanted to be out there. They didn't want to play. That's why you should have put Bryce Young back into the game. And people are going, oh, well, what if Bryce Young got hurt or you're down Damian Lewis and they're getting after the passer. You don't want your quarterback to get hurt. Will Anderson's out there. The Texans are potentially Super Bowl bound. Amazing defense. One of the more underrated and I think, honestly, on pace to be the best defense in football. Stroud's a killer. And you're above keeping Bryce Young and the first team offense in the game for another drive. That to me is ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. And I think, like Scott Fowler said, they should have some more momentum before they roll into the regular season because it's been 2 shoddy performances. And Canales seems to think that's okay, whatever. I mean, he said it there. They're practicing well. They're practicing well. But I don't know. There's something to be said about doing it in a game. Even Mike Kay was critical. Mike Kay goes on X, the issue is why play them at all if the results gleaned are 3 3-and-outs and a touchdown. I just kind of find it curious to push playing the starters all off season and then just limit them to 4 drives of mostly meh. And that's such a good take by Mike because honestly, he hits the nail on the head better than I have this entire show, which is, why can't Canales just give us a straight answer? They push putting these guys on the field in the preseason, and then the moment push comes to shove, Canales is like, all right, let's get out of here unscathed. And maybe some of that's the reaction to Nick Scorton. I get it. That's a contributor, a potential starter who is now suffering an injury that has an unknown timeline. So maybe that pushed Canales and that staff over the line and said, let's hold back here. We don't want any more injuries. But honestly, last week he was saying 3 drives in Houston. And then you get to Houston and it's like, whatever, they're practicing well, you guys can come out. Whatever. I'm still not pushing the panic button. I know many of you are. And here's why. I think what happened in Houston with the first team offense, and we'll talk about the defense, which is a lot different of a product, but I think what happened with the offense could have happened any game. You start slow, you have a couple bad reps. Sure. You're down your left guard, you're down Damian Lewis. It happens. But the Panthers are showing it in practice, which gives me faith. It's another reason to have a little faith. Joe Person, Young looks to be coming into his own in year 3. He's more comfortable in the offense and seems to be on the same page as Canales after last year with some hard feelings. Mike K. Bryce Young's short afternoon workload offered a puzzling entry into what has been an otherwise strong summer for the third-year passer. Scott Fowler, what we know for sure is that despite the positive vibes generated by a number of fine Carolina plays and joint scrimmage versus Houston, very little of that practice mojo made the transition to the game Saturday. So I think what is played out on X, what you have seen, the joint practice wasn't utter domination by the Panthers. Don't listen to the state-fueled media. It wasn't utter domination. Houston had some wins too, but at the least, T-Mac beat Stingley, I believe, a couple times. Bryce Young had some nice plays in that practice. They looked good. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I thought I did. I believe Bryce Young had 2 touchdowns in that joint practice. They didn't get utterly dominated, and they showed enough. So they're showing it in practice, but it's not translating to the field. A little bit of a red flag, but again, it's the preseason. The Panthers' offensive line should improve, and that's a reason for optimism. Damian Lewis, he is the main domino in that equation. They need him back because these guys that they're rolling out, Cade Mays was the replacement for Lewis in Houston. Didn't look great, but obviously the entire offensive line did not look great on those 2 drives where Bryce Young was at the helm. Ja'Tyre Carter, another replacement, he can't play. Supposedly this Jarrett Kingston guy, I mean, he looked a little better in the game. He fell on the fumble, but Ja'Tyre Carter, some of these guys, they're not going to be here. Carter could be a notable cut, according to Joe Person. The Panthers are going to get Chandler Zavala back. I don't even like saying that name because it's like Chandler Zavala gives me nightmares from 2023, which is why I think so many Panthers fans overreacted to this entire loss in general, because Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter dominating those tackles on the second drive, and the first drive, quite frankly, too, just gave shades of 2023, where Bryce Young has nothing but a collapsing pocket. And that is why people are so upset. But you're going to get players back. And whether it's Zavala who can fill in, or just getting Damian Lewis back in the starting lineup, Cade Mays, the backup center, you're hoping this thing gels together. And I'm confident it will once guys get their feet moving and their feet underneath them, of course. My reason for concern is the defense. Oh my gosh. The Panthers defense, some of these guys they're rolling out, and it is abysmal. There's so many directions I can go with this. It's like people have been defending the throne, talking about their optimism for the defense. This defense sucks. This defense is not good. Nick Chubb was running through the Panthers linebackers like they were pillows. And Roseboom and Trevin Wallace were getting off the blocks. They were getting off the blocks, but as soon as Chubb was running into those guys, he was pushing them 5 yards in the other direction. It seemed Chubb got whatever he wanted against those linebackers who are starting for your team. Mike Kay talks about Chris Barnes, who the Panthers signed under the radar signing, a guy who was good in Green Bay. He's sort of fallen off in recent history, but the Panthers add him to add veteran depth. He had a nice practice Thursday, supposedly, and a near interception in that game. But with Roseboom, writes Mike Kay, having an underwhelming summer, Barnes has been in the league for 5 years and is a nice little insurance policy. They're going to need someone to step up at inside linebacker. I don't know if Nick Chubb is like rekindled what he used to be. I thought Chubb was a shell of himself at this point in his career. He looked like an all-pro running back, going against some of those Panthers linebackers. I'm not kidding. Pushing Roseboom, pushing Wallace 10 yards in the other direction. It was disheartening. Another reason for concern of that defense are the corners. Yes, you have J.C. Horn coming back. You won't have Shemar Bartholomew lining up against the wide receiver one week one. And honestly, thank God that is the case. That guy cannot play. Shemar Bartholomew cannot play. Every single play I saw him in that game, he was getting burned. Nico Collins ran a fly route. I believe it was in the first or second drive. And Stroud missed the throw. He threw it closer to the sideline. It could have been a touchdown, a long touchdown for Collins. Bartholomew in coverage. Bartholomew got burnt by Collins in the red zone as Stroud found Collins in the end zone for a touchdown. Everywhere, Bartholomew was getting burned. And Corey Thornton got burnt too. He wasn't perfect, a lot better than Bartholomew, but you're relying on a lot of players in this secondary who I'm not confident in them being able to cover the opponent outside of what you have in J.C. Horn. Whether it's Corey Thornton, Chow Smith-Wade, Mike Jackson got beat by Jayden Higgins. That set the Texans up on the 26 early in the game. These guys were getting toasted all game. And I don't have faith in this group figuring it out. Nick Scott is still the starting safety somehow. And whatever concoction of corners, I think Thornton's going to be good, but leaning on him as your second corner or third corner, leaning on Mike Jackson again, Chow Smith-Wade relying on him taking a step forward, and then whatever you have at safety aside from Trevon Moehrig, it's just, I don't think it's going to be enough. And now you combine that with some of the issues you might have with the pass rush, with Scorton going down. Who knows when he gets back? Yamami Allen looked good in the game, sure. But you watch Will Anderson, you watch Danielle Hunter. The Panthers have nothing even close to that. They have nothing even close to that. So Derek Brown and J.C. Horn, blue chip cornerstones of this franchise, they need more outside of that. They need more, whether they add someone. I don't know how they're going to do it. A lot of people in the comments are saying they can take the South. They can take the South. If they have the 22nd ranked defense, if they're just, a little below average, they'll be okay. I don't think they're getting there. I honestly, I'm not trying to panic. I'm not trying to rage bait you or anything. They suck. A lot of those guys cannot play. And I am concerned because if you're rolling Shemar Bartholomew or some of the players the Panthers have had on the defense this preseason, Bam Martin, Scott, these guys that you just never heard of. No disrespect to them. It's not personal. They can't play. They can't play, and there are concerns on that side of the ball. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been the Tone Breakdown. Week 2, preseason loss. Panthers lose to the Texans, and Dave Canales doesn't care because he doesn't care about the preseason because it doesn't matter. This is the Tone. We're coming back with so much more for you this week. Thank you for tuning in.